Paintball nerd.
All right. Today's guest on Paintball Nerds Fun 5 has been playing paintball for nearly 30 years. He began his professional career in 1997 with the Ironmen while also playing with the Iron Kids. In 2002, he went to Miami Effect to debut X-Ball. In 2004, he played with Excessive to help build that team. And in 2006, he went to Dynasty where he finished his career and played with them for 5 years. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Mr. Davey Williamson. Hey, buddy. Yay, you made it. How's it going?
Going, man, day by day. Life. Groundhog's Day as an adult with kids.
Yeah. Dude, I remember when I first saw you. In fact, I don't know if I've ever told you this story. So, are you ready for it?
Good or bad?
It's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic because you laid it out. You laid out what my life would be like.
Okay.
So, I saw you with an Adrenaline Angel on the spool field at Borderland Paintball in Otay.
Sounds about right.
First time I ever saw a professional player. And I saw you just like one-balling the walk-ons and being real nice to them, like real gentleman-like, not like, like not trying to destroy anyone. You were just out there getting reps in and having a good time. And I followed you off the field. I saw your Ironman jersey. I'd watched Game On. Remember that video? So I knew who you were. I'm like, that's Davey from the Ironman. And I followed you and I'm like, man, are you Davey? And you're like, yeah, I'm Davey. And I'm like, tell me about being a pro. Like, how do I become pro? And he's like, well, you got to get a job, kid. You can't just be a pro and make money. You got to get a job. I'm like, what do you do? And you're like, I sell these. And you held up a boomstick. And I work for Dye. And I was like, oh, that would be amazing if I could play on the Ironman and work for Dye. So I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I mean, you kind of laid it out for me because that ended up being my path.
Yeah, I mean, back then that's kind of how it understood to be the way it is today, really. You need to get, I mean, anyone that says they're a professional paintball player doesn't really have a 401k, do they?
No, probably not.
I mean, there's a lot of guys out there right now making plenty of money, but it's usually in flipping houses for the money they get from paintball.
Yeah, you got to have another job. It's definitely a labor of love, right? It's not like a lucrative sport.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be more money when I first started. I remember hearing Eric Felix would get like a pallet of paint delivered to him back then, and that was like $200 a case. Shit, that's more money than every guy makes now.
Yeah,
that's
true.
It's kind of gone down a little bit. Now you're like, guys are like, I'm pro. And it's like, what does that mean? I remember having a run-in with J-Rab one time. We were in, I think we were in Portugal or somewhere. And some random place. And he was like, I can't believe you're playing on a Division II European team. And I was like, brother, you need to define the definition of pro. Yeah. Before I walked on the plane, I had my paycheck. You're still playing in the finals hoping to get something.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. I mean, pro's defined by if you make money doing it, right?
Yeah. I mean, and, competitive pro was fun. You go to the finals and there's a lot of everything's on the line.
Yeah.
But man, I had a house at 22, so I had a mortgage. I had bills to pay. And I kind of looked at it like a business like that. And don't get me wrong. Losing to Dynasty for $50,000 in Miami one time was just heartbreaking because that was a good chunk, right? But the reason I left teams was because one team I left was Excessive, or Miami Effect was because Excessive guaranteed me a certain number for the year. I think it was like $11,000 a year back then. Woo! But if you're only playing, if that's all you're doing and you're selling guns and selling paintballs and selling stuff and whoring yourself out to European teams, it's great.
I mean, traveling the world, there's something to be said for that too. There is value in getting a plane ticket to somewhere around the globe and basically having a vacation where you're shooting a paintball gun.
It's the most valuable thing out of paintball, Isaac. Looking back now that I've done with it and got little kids and kind of just sitting around like a fat old turd, it's really like looking back, what I do miss, and I was just telling Glenn Forrester this when he's asking me to play a 10-man coming up. Like, I honestly need to see the roster first before I can say, oh, I want to play, because what is it, like Ambush Park? No offense to where Ambush Park is or anything like that, but it isn't really lighting a candle in my world to drive up to LA and run around in the dirt for 2 days. But if I get to go see with BC or Johnny, or like Telford's there or something like that, that's what I go to do. That's the draw now. You know, fly across the country and see Todd Adamson give me crap that he's been giving me since I was 18 years old, or, you know, make fun of Steve Rabikoff, or just some of these guys, you know, see Richie and just some of the older guys, and hang out with Archie and Travis. And I mean, there's so many names that I can name drop, but that's what happens when you play for 20 years.
Yeah. Well, Davey, over these last 20 years, man, you've built up an amazing career. You've had a ton of memories, and I won't make you pick one because I know there's so many, but what are some of your favorite memories in paintball?
You asked me this earlier, and then they kind of like, you went away for a little bit to think. I got one that stands out to me, and it may not be what people think. It was, I got cut from the Ironmen. Rich Telford cut me, and he cut me because I was an asshole. And that all proceeded to turn into, well, you know, whatever, man. My path worked out well for me.
Yeah.
So then Travis called me, and this is a long memory. I know it's, you know, we're looking for one specific thing. Said, oh, you got to come play for us. I'm building this team, Miami Effect, man. I said, I'm done. I want to work. I was making pretty good money at Dye doing sales. As you know, that was pretty lucrative back then when you're selling barrels for $100 and some.
Right.
And then I went and played for Miami Effect. And I was going to play on their team. And there was a, you know, back then you had to be on a sponsored team and you had to work. And that wasn't going to work for Dye, which I understand now looking back. Then I didn't think it was a good idea. I thought it was kind of, you know, crappy. But now looking back, you need your guy to be in the office as the same guy, right? My best memory was making the decision to go play for Miami Effect, essentially costing me my job. And that really was the defining moment where I was like 23 years old. And, you know, I had a house, but I was like, man, I'm not an old man. I want to travel, like we just talked about. I want to travel. The value is now in traveling, going and having fun with my friends for the next, what I thought would be 1 or 2 years with Travis and those guys. And, you know, but it ended up being like that turned into, I was 34. So, you know, 11 years later, I was like, I got to stop now. Now I got to stop. Like now I'm thinking about having kids. This has got to end. But my friends would always say we were Peter Pan land, you know?
It definitely is, man. It's like, yeah, you're like a lost boy.
Yeah. I mean, like, you know, a couple, you know, things, you know, you do miss out. You miss out on weddings. You miss out on birthdays. You miss out on things, you know, people are like, well, I didn't see you there. I'm like, yeah, because paintball is only a weekend sport. Yeah. And everybody plans their life on the weekend, you know, and that's one of those sacrifices you have to make. If you're willing to play pro, if you're essentially, you know, going to give up everything, the return has to be the friendships that you get. And it has to be the, you know, memories you have.
Yeah.
You know, that's the return you got to give up. I mean, to get. But so besides that, one of my biggest paintball memories, like on the field.
Yeah.
If I have to pick one, God, there's so many. Like, you've played for so long, I'm sure that's tough for anybody you've asked. You know, like, it's got to be Huntington Beach when Excessive finally beat Dynasty. Yeah. Like, it wasn't a personal goal, but it was like, I remember thinking, like, I'm not going to leave this team hell or high water until we can take them down. Like, and it was only one event, you know, and they're still great. And it was like a blip on their radar. But we did run off a couple after that. But, man, that was one of those, like, climb to the mountain and kick them off. And then was like, okay, now I can go play for whoever I want. And it happened to be I went to play for Dynasty.
Worked out perfectly.
I mean, like, I'd known those guys since Iron Kids, man. It wasn't like was like I was essentially one of their like older brothers, or, you know, half that team was in my wedding. You know, it's like we played against each other, but it was no love lost, you know. Maybe me trying to kill Ryan every once in 6 months because he's Ryan. But yeah,
in your Davey, yeah.
That was the thing, you know. Back then, those are the stories you had, and I got a chance to live through a lot of those, you know. Ironmen All-American, Ironmen Shock, you know, Dynasty Excessive, which, you know, is a pretty big one for a lot of people that are watching now, you know. But, you know, there's a lot of rivalries, like, you know, the Yankees, Red Sox. You got to have that in a sport. You got to have the Raiders. You got to have the hated team. And that's what we were trying to kind of accomplish so we could sell paintball. And that's what Richmond tried to do with, you know, with X-Ball, you know, make it so it was so. Man, the first years of X-Ball were brutal. Did you play for you played for the Ironman after later, right?
I played for the Ironman in the first year of X-Ball as well. Yeah. Full auto. That shit was crazy.
And you guys had those big matrices.
Yeah, we had the big matrices, and eventually we got the DM4s. It was nuts.
I mean, those guns were all, I mean, if you didn't have a cheating gun, you were already handicapped.
Yeah, well, you didn't need a cheating gun. It was full auto.
Well, yeah.
Full auto, uncapped.
Yeah, but you still needed that thing to be able to keep up.
Yeah. Yeah,
like,
so you had to have a good halo.
Yeah, that was the loader was probably the biggest thing, was getting a loader to keep up and your nerve system to keep up with the pain.
Oh yeah, man, I never been shot so much in my life during that first year. It was nuts.
Looking back, those are the only videos I kind of really like to watch, because you got to get blown to pieces, and it's like now it's like some kind of amazing event that two guys stand off and shoot the crap out of each other. Back then, that was just going to the X.
Exactly.
And just
100%, dude.
Like, it wasn't like go up there and shoot somebody. It was like go up there and stop that son of a bitch from coming on our side of the field.
Yeah. Exactly, dude. It's so crazy how much the game has evolved. And like, it's like, I mean, you could say it with anything, not just paintball, but like, you know, sometimes you look at how the game was back then and look at it now and think like, are we making people softer, or did we create harder people back then? I don't know.
I mean, honestly, I was just looking at obviously I still got a bunch of Instagram friends and Dynasty and stuff like that, and looking at those videos, and I do props to Oliver for coming back, and
yeah,
they win World Cup with that. But paintball nowadays is not as challenging as it used to be. Like, those guys are great, and this is just my opinion, obviously, but it's not creative. Like, you've got a field that has so many bunkers, and it's so practiced and recorded and replayed. There's not the creativity. I would think back to like a guy like Richie Malachewski. Now, there's way more athletic guys today. Don't get me wrong. Guys today are way more in shape, more fine-tuned athletes. Speed is still speed. Back then, fast guys were fast guys, but fast guys ran 100 yards before they got to something sometimes.
Exactly.
I don't want to sound like a super old guy, but even when the X-Ball field first came out, a corner was a nightmare to get to.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like, I look at these videos and it's like, there's so much crap in the way. I hate to say it, but Oliver just kind of made everyone look bad. The dude in Bali having a spiritual journey for the last 10 years. Walks out on the paintball field, and these guys that have been practicing for the last 10 years, grinding sharpening their swords, and iron sharpens iron. He's like, yeah, whatever, dude. I made this shirt, and I'm gonna kick your ass.
Yeah,
he's always surrounded by great players, but it's like, dude, you should maybe give up if a guy can come from the jungle of Bali, walk on the field, and go up to the X and dice you up. Like, dude, take up cornhole or something.
I was just talking to Oliver about like how the game is different, and how like look at guys like Richie, who can be like sneaky and methodical and make a big move, and that type of thing made people's career. Like, a single move made you famous, paintball famous, and today it's just like bang, 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 bang. You could make an amazing move, and if your team lost 5-1, no one remembers it. Yeah,
like I give all the credit in the world to making Rocky famous.
Yeah,
Rocky jumped over a snake, shot me in the back of the head, and no one knew who the hell Rocky Cagnoni. He used to have green hair and play on a team called Nemesis, and all of a sudden he jumps over and he's on this video, and it's like the poofy hair, and he looks around, and now it's like Rocky Cagnoni, who was a great guy. Yeah. But I will say to him, man, you're lucky I was in that snake.
Well, dude, so is everyone else, man. That move.
Yeah, Rocky's Rocky's the greatest.
It's like, dude, that was like, it was like watching. Alex said this is like watching the first person slam dunk. It's like, you can't do that, It's just like, where did that come from?
Yeah,
but
now people are jumping that move made all day.
Exactly, dude. Ryan does it like 5 times a tournament, and like does it like while he's running parallel to the ground, and he'll like run well and bunker someone while diving, and it looks amazing. And it's like no one even takes pictures of it anymore. And like Rocky became paintball famous from that move. It's funny how often he comes up in these interviews.
Because Rocky's been around forever, and if you travel to the I hated to, like, you look back and there was like, with all these travels, and when you were guys that were traveling all the time, and I mean, I don't want to go way off your topic here, but most memories, but the upper echelon was hanging out with the upper echelon. We were like the Kardashians before the Kardashians, It's like we had a group of people. There was Avalanche, there was Ironmen, Aftershock, lockout guys, but there was some guys that would go and hang out and like had to go to the bar, get drunk, play hungover the next day, or or afterwards. We're able to squash all the beef. There's no big deal.
Yeah.
And those guys were the guys that all just kind of hung out and had a good time. And if you fit into that crowd, usually your name will come up in these conversations. Because the stories they remember are more like, hey, remember that time in Orlando at that Davey played? That's right, we played that tournament that day. But like going to Europe and you'd be in a bar when it'd be 4 or 5 American guys only. So that's obviously you met a guy from a team you didn't really know, but you're like, you speak the same language I do. Let's hang out. So that's really where it kind of solidified all the groups.
So when it comes to all the groups, like all the people that you've met, all the people that you've played with, Davey, do you have a favorite player? Doesn't have to be favorite person on the field that you like watching. It could just be a favorite person in paintball.
There's too many people. They're all great people, dude. Like I always said I tell my kids, I could still probably do it now. I could get on Facebook and be like, hey, I'm going to be in your city. Can I crash on your couch? Because I mean, when I had people crash on the couch here, it was always that, kind of that, oh, I'm putting the groundwork in for if I ever get stuck in your city. But, there's great people. Like one of the greatest people ever, to kind of help me out was like Leds from Planet. I spent a week with him in England, and that was a great time. All those guys are great. It just can't come down to one person. I remember like Rich, and it was Rich and Gina, his ex-wife, putting up with 9 dudes sleeping in their house.
Yeah.
No, that's, that there's always the backbone is somebody else usually putting up with the shit.
Yeah.
What
about your favorite player then?
My favorite player or the best player, who in my opinion, I think is the best player.
Oh, if there's a difference, then please share both.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference. My talent doesn't overshadow. I mean, he's still one of my friends, but I was thinking of like Ryan Greenspan is the best paintball player to ever play.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unarguable at this point in time.
Right.
He has gone from every generation. He's 40. He's almost 40 years. I think he's 40 now.
He's 40. Yeah.
40. I mean, he's still, I guarantee every team would love to have him. They probably pay for him. Mm-hmm. He's played on the same team, which, that does have some credit.
Absolutely.
Teams try to take him. Everybody try to take him. He's passed up deals that sometimes when I've hung out with him that I'm like, that's not true. There's no way that guy tried to give you that. But dude, it's kind of like the LeBron comment, Michael, like it's just over longevity. He's proven that. I think he's the best paintball player. Is there more talented guys at one certain thing? Yeah, obviously. Sure. But that's not how paintball works. You're a utility player all around at this point in time.
Yeah.
He's got the creativity to come from out of the woods and will play in the woods and still mess around. He's got, the knowledge of like, he's playing chess. Mm-hmm. He still sees the field probably better than most people. That's one thing I think gets lost nowadays is that's when you don't have 7-man and you don't have 10-man, it's X-ball is just a tunnel. And you got guys that are only looking at their tunnel. Whereas, one of my quality, I don't want to say, well, I could always tell what was going on the other side of the field, even if I wasn't looking at it, by just the sounds of the guns. And that's something that you really just have to learn over time and time again, getting shot in the back in the woods when all of a sudden it got real quiet. Mm-hmm. And that's, some of those guys today couldn't. That's why when you see those wood ball tournaments, sometimes you're like, that's a stacked team. And then they take 8th. Like, oh, look at these guys. They're all on. And I don't want to throw anybody on the bus. You see all these teams like, oh, well, this is guy, and this guy, and this guy. And it's like, yeah, there's no balloon stuff out there. Not that they're not good players. They're just not good players in that ball. But you take a guy like a Ryan and Oliver and Alex, a Yosh, some of those guys like Archie, those guys, the guys that come out of the woods, played 7-man. This all goes in, played X-ball. X-ball today, again, going back to the Oliver point, has proven that it's repeat and recycle. Yep. If you were in good enough shape, if I lost 25 pounds and could, shave off some stuff, I could probably go out there and be a pretty good amateur player. It's once you get the snap shooting and it's not a lot of like creativity and kind of changing the dynamic of the game. Even the game plans are so rehearsed. You kind of have an idea by watching a team. There's not like 100 game plans. It's 2.
Yeah. Well, in Guadalajara, we went out 2 years ago. We went out there and got 2nd place, and none of us had played paintball in a very long time.
Yeah, even remember Brandon said, "I'll never do this again. This is too exhausting." That is the difference now, is the true physical aspect of X-ball is just way beyond.
Right.
10-man days, you'd play a game. Yeah, you'd run far, but you'd sit there, and all of a sudden you'd get a half an hour break, and that was always the drag. It's like, oh, next game's in 2 hours.
Yeah,
I gotta get up. It's like the one thing I do enjoy about X-ball is it's like constant. Your schedule's done.
Yeah.
But so my favorite player who I think is the best player, I think would be Ryan. One of my overall favorite people is probably Alex or Yosh. Guys that are still playing today, like, oh man, there's a lot of guys out there that I would say that are really good people. It's the list is too long. Obviously, I'm best friends with Maddie. I've known him since we were 12. We still hang out. That's just saying. My favorite paintball player, one of my favorite paintball players to watch and emulate, was Richie Malachewski.
Yeah.
Like Richie, to me, going back to the point I was trying to make about earlier, wasn't the most snap shooting talented guy in the world, but creativity wise and kind of seeing the whole field and knowing what needed to be done was probably one of the best. Billy Saransky was a great general in the field. Actually, one of my favorite players is Todd Adamson.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he's still out there. I mean, he's jacked right now. He
is.
Seems to be semi-retired, playing paintball all the time and still running his mouth. Like every time I see him, he's talking shit.
Yeah.
But it's still one of my favorite stories about Todd that I tell every time I kind of near him or someone. We were playing in France one time, and I don't know. I mean, he played for so many teams. He was almost like the first paintball whore. He'd bounce around from team to team. But I think he was playing for Shock, had a team over there or somebody, with JT would pay for everybody to go. It was the old ones that were connected by the tubes. Remember the tube? Like it had the ring around it? Yeah. So like that was the boundary. So technically if you were inside the boundary, you could play. And I was coming down the snake on these guys, and the snake was kicked in like maybe 10 feet from the boundary.
Yeah.
And I'm laying in the snake, and I remember Todd Adamson's in front of me, and I'm thinking, okay, I got to wait for that. I got to look for the hip. It's going to come from the hip, and he's going to, I don't know, he could come out of nowhere. And all of a sudden, I kind of see the tube on the ground is now moving. And I was like, what the hell? He had wrapped around his foot and pushed it all the way out so that he could shoot into the snake on me. I mean, and that's creativity.
Yeah.
And it's like, I would have never thought of that. It's kind of one of those things. I was thinking, man, that's like one of my favorite painters. Like that guy was like, okay, well, obviously I think he's going to get me by crawling the snake and shooting people. So I'm just going to expand the field.
Yeah.
It's like taking the football field line and being like, nah, I'm going to put it behind the coaches and then run behind them.
Well, back in woods ball, you could bend the tape. Like you could lean out on the tape and bend the tape out. So same principle. And you probably wouldn't have known that if you never played woods ball,
Yeah, but I never thought of it. Like I thought that was all done with the woods ball with the ropes.
Yeah.
And then he did an air ball. I was like, son of a bitch.
That's awesome.
That's like last year I played, or was it 2 years ago? I played at the Pittsburgh, what is that? What was that called?
Yeah.
The Tim Montressor tournament. The
ICC.
ICC, yeah, they call it that now. And I remember he was one of the last guys left, and I came running across the field. I was like, I'm going to stuff Todd Adams. Like, I'm not even going to let this guy, it was like 3-on-1. And he was like, I blew a hole in his glove. He wouldn't shut up about it for like 2 days. He was just like, what? Where are you coming from? I was like, I wasn't going to let any poopy antics happen. As soon as I saw it was him, I was like, I'm going to go get this guy.
Yeah, because he could do like one of these.
Yeah, I mean,
one of those.
He somehow gets the one paintball that bounces off a hype ball tube, shoots the guy behind me, and it's a one-on-one. I don't want to get embarrassed getting shot by him one-on-one.
Yeah. Yeah, he'll shoot one paintball, it'll split into two and gog two people.
Wouldn't be surprised if he's done that before.
Yeah.
Left-handed over his head between his legs or something like that. I mean, those guys are great. Like, I still make fun of him all the time because he's like played with All-Americans now, and I'm like, oh, didn't you play with Shock? Weren't you a Shock guy?
Yeah.
Like
everyone's friends now.
Yeah, dude. Nowadays, who cares? But then it was always the, if you were an Ironman, you were never going to All-Americans, or if you were Shock, you were never going to go there. Hell, that time Billy Saransky, or not, Mike Bruner ran out of bounds. They burned a whole entire kit and like danced around it like Indians. I mean, that was back then. That was like $250 worth of just camo. They just burned to make a point.
Yeah.
I was actually playing in that game when Bruno ran onto our field, came out of the water, One where he went and swam down the. I don't know if you've heard that story or someone's told that. Yeah,
out of bounds.
He ran right behind me. I was like, where the hell did Mike Bruno just come from? And then I heard about it after, because we were playing some other team at the same time, and then we heard about it afterwards. First of all, it would be shitty if it happened to you. I understood the All Americans, but looking back, it's really funny.
Yeah, it's hilarious, dude, and you got away with it. So
what I thought was funny, and I told Todd one time, I was like, you guys were so bad at paintball that time that was your game plan. Like you guys went. It's almost like the Avalanche was struggling so hard that they had Dave go in the woods and shoot the GZ guys. Like that was your game plan? You guys couldn't come up with any fucking game plan.
No, it wasn't Dave. It was Jeremy.
Or Jeremy. Yeah, sorry, Jeremy Solom. Yeah, that was your game plan, that you couldn't come up with a real optimal game plan to like. And some guy was like, you know what I could do? I could swim down this river and come out behind, or I could go in the woods. Like that's the old days of paintball.
They're walking the field and like, you know what? A normal game plan is not going to cut it against this.
We don't have a chance normally here. But if I go into the river, swim down, and come out behind them, they'll never expect it. No shit.
So Davey, the story I told you about when I first saw you play paintball, I think you were wearing the Dye visor that you tie. It's like a headband, but you
still have it
tied in the back.
I still have it.
It inspired me to get one of those, and I wore it for a little while. But do you have like a favorite item in paintball?
Yeah, I mean, Sandana, my first full Sandana, like the whole, and the reason I started wearing it wasn't really because it looked cool or whatever. It was there was ticks at the field we played at, so I heard they would keep ticks out of my hair, and I covered over my ears because my ears would get sunburnt. Back then, you didn't always have to wear ear protection or mask.
Yeah.
So like I would keep it over my ears for the whole day. But that was like my favorite. I would always, no matter what gear change or whatever happened, I would always have a Sandana. And sometimes it got like weird with like, we're playing in the indoor and it's like, why do you have a camouflage Sandana on?
Do you still have the Sandana or did you sell it for $1 million?
I actually think someone took it out of my bag, the original one. I still have one, but I don't know. I did sell one time with a very, very limited edition Ego. They made me a powder blue and gold for the Chargers Ego, and I sold one, but I don't think it was the original one. But I don't have my original one anymore. It probably shreds at some point in time. They don't last that long, especially when you get your head peeled apart.
Yeah, next ball.
And I couldn't play paintball without gloves.
Yeah,
like I
had cut the fingers off or no?
I cut the 2 fingers off.
Yeah, me too.
But I would never. It would freak me out, like to have, like I remember Johnny would never wear gloves, and I'd be like, "You want some gloves, man? Gotta get some gloves." Like we're sponsored, we get gloves. And I think it came like from those X-Ball days of like the original full auto. Like I wanted as much padding on as possible.
Yeah, man, it didn't feel good back in the day, especially if you had someone angry gunning after you.
Well, yeah,
you were gonna get it, dude.
There's 5 days of the real world walking around looking like you've got ringworm on the back of your hand. Doesn't exactly look appealing. They go to shake someone's hand and they're like, what the hell is wrong with this guy?
They're like,
Yeah, hard nose before COVID. What the hell?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple things, a couple superstitions, but I never really got I hated wearing a white goggle. Remember that? I wore those white Dynasty goggles for a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Never been shot in the goggles so many times, and I realized I think it was Skinny Kevin was like, you have white goggles, right? They can see your white goggles, and I'm like, that makes a shitload of sense.
Yeah, sure does.
White doesn't blend in with anything in paintball. Like the white paintballs the guys used to shoot, easy to dodge.
Yep. So Davey, for those that want to get there, and we kind of alluded to this in the beginning here, but what does it take to get to the top in paintball?
Nowadays, I would have to be hard to tell you. Like today, I would be I don't know enough about what's going on in paintball to know, but what I used to do clinics and tell people, like I'd be in BFE doing a clinic for somebody and I would tell them, and this is probably a longer conversation, but with the pussification of sports in America now, you got to get the hell out of amateur A or amateur B and get your shit kicked in. And that's the only way you're going to get better. Like instead of hiding in a bracket, like a flight or a bracket that you're really good in, stop being the big fish in the little pond and go be a little fish in a big pond.
Yeah.
And learn and learn and learn. And for individuals out there, man, don't be afraid to leave a team if they're holding you back. like I get loyalty and I get all that, but if your goal is to get to the top of the mountain, it's really hard to drag 5 or 6 guys up with you.
Yeah, if they're not on the same page, especially.
If they're not doing the same thing, like we would always, it'd be really clear and evident, in the heyday, guys that were putting in the work and guys that weren't, it stands out real. I think we mentioned it earlier when we were just chatting, and, guys that were playing 15 events a year, you would always know the guy that was playing all the time. It would be obvious the guy that just hadn't picked up a paintball gun. And I think Dalton even said this the other day, like, it's almost like golf. You got to play a lot. You want to get better at it, you got to play a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, certain parts of paintball, they are talents that expire.
When I go out and play now, like it takes me the one thing I did like about like the last ICC I played in was I did play the 5-man, but it wore me down. Like I was exhausted by Sunday 10-man finals, but it gave me a day to get back to shooting and snap shooting and, just kind of getting the weight in my sliding with the gun is a very, very unique talent. I mean, Ryan will tell you right now, I'm terrible at going left-handed sliding. Like that used to be the thing they'd make fun of me about. We do these clinics sliding, and I would always be like, you got to teach that. I can't do it.
No, dude, for sure. Like sliding with a gun is a perishable skill set for sure. Just like snap shooting.
You get a little older, you got a little more value on your body too. You're like, I'm not diving.
Dude. And like they're diving on turf these days. I remember diving at Richesfield when it was like basically concrete.
I saw sparks come off a gun there one time because it came out of my hand and it sparked the gun. And I was like, wow, how many, we're not there yet. But I imagine when I'm 70-ish, I'm going to be like, that's a day where I was like, that was a Modesto day. Like I woke up today and it's one less day of moving around easy.
Dude, I remember I had this raspberry on my elbow that would never heal. Like it would get right to the point of healing. And then the weekend came and I'd open it back up again. And it stayed a raspberry for years until they came out with better elbow pads.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the equipment's a lot better nowadays too. Right. And the surroundings are a lot easier. Like all the fields are turf to practice on. The grass that they play on is, it's not used over and over again. It's not like Badlands. It's not a walk-on field, then a paintball field. It's a paintball field for the weekend, and then they destroy it, and then it gets to become back to piece of grass. Yeah. That's the one plus, you dive in over and over again into a Dorito nowadays, it probably doesn't hurt as much.
True.
And it doesn't look like from the videos I've seen, you have to get a lot of momentum going because it's not that far.
Yeah, 10 steps or so, then you're in sliding.
Yeah, it was like one of the last times like I realized that this was coming to an end was that we were practicing at Velocity and it was hot as shit. And I remember thinking, dude, I think Skinny Kevin was the coach or somebody was the coach. They're like, do it again. I'm like, dude, I've run this pattern every which way it can be run. Why do we have Sunday practice? Like, why? At this point in time, I'm playing more paintball. Like you should. That's probably why pro football players don't practice Monday, Tuesday. Like it's once you get to a certain level, the reps are the reps, but the running the routes and doing all that is like that. Like I used to like the drill where we'd start in our bunkers. Yeah,
well, running the routes is for the shooters. They need something to shoot at.
Yeah, so go find someone that's not close to the end.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that's but even that, it's most of ththese guys are so talented now. Like once they get it a couple times, they pick a spot and then you go to the field. That's the one thing it just always bother me is like you practice this for 2-3 weekends in a row. You probably get, close to 100 points out there. And then you go and you're like, this isn't set up the same way. It's an idea. Yeah. Now we got to get this shot back down.
Exactly.
And that's when you're going to try and do like a baseball field or a football field. It's not identical. It's not identical. You can't have it. You got to just have the concept.
Yeah. So Davey, man, all these years and all the experiences that you've had, all the friendships that you've made, what would you say you're most thankful for that paintball has given you?
Oh, I mean, I wouldn't be sitting where I am right to this moment right now if it wasn't for paintball. I wouldn't have my 3 beautiful kids. I wouldn't have my wife. I wouldn't have everything. It's like that is the chapter in the book. Like it's
several chapters.
You can't have the book. You can't have the book just go from, your adolescence to, whatever, and then just skip 4 or 5 chapters and be the old man. without having this bulk. It's probably the bulk of the chapter. It created, you know, I tell my daughter all the time, one of my daughters is very competitive. She's sort of like me, very competitive. And I kind of try, I mean, she's only 9, but I'm trying to tell her, you know, hey, you got to watch, because you'll end up getting cut from teams if you voice your opinion too strongly. You know, there's an ability to be coachable is an ability, you know, work with others. It's hard to tell people that are very competitive that, like, sometimes you don't see what's down the road because you just want results right then and then and then, right then and there. You know, it's like, and then my other daughter, who's not very competitive, I tell her, you know, you got to find something that drives you. Like, is it somebody said about you? Is it, you know, you got to, if you're not just that naturally, like, I want to beat someone 100-0, then you need to find like a niche, you know, like I've heard, you know, I guess I would hate to say compare my daughter, but like Michael Jordan would always say, like, someone talk shit about me. It's like, the guy's like, I didn't say anything.
He made it up. Yeah.
Like, you can just make it up. Like you got to find something to get people to get yourself going. And so back to your thing is, I wouldn't have the job I have now if it wasn't for paintball. I mean, I feel like I have a pretty good life. I got great kids and great friends and family, and that all came from life lessons that I learned during paintball, friendships that I learned during paintball or grew during paintball. And kind of like, back to what I said, is knowing when to be like, nah, pass on you, miss me with that guy. You're a waste of time. You know, that kind of really gets later in life when you see these people, you know, wanting to be even more about like drunk than just having a good time. Or, you know, it's like, I got no time for you if you're right now in my life, like just causing problems for no reason.
Yep.
So that awesome, would be Davey. What would I say about that?
Awesome, dude. Well, thank you so much for your time here today. Is there anything that you'd like to part with for the paintball community?
Go on website and buy some stuff, people. Help out. Support the community. Jeez, if you're going to watch this, you might as well click on a link and buy something.
Awesome, dude. Thank you so much.
Bye, man.